What does it take to design album artwork? Well, that can be a really big question built by a bunch of smaller questions. Like, what colors should I use? How will my imagery tell a story? What will my typography look like and communicate? How do I work with the band members to make sure they get what they want while still maintaining my own artistic voice and artistic process? I have recently had the opportunity to ask these questions and more when designing album art for your new favorite rock band. Occasions is a name of a band that performs high energy rock music all around Florida, and they emailed me looking to get some album art made by me, commissioned me to make that artwork, and by the time I saw that email, the album artwork needed to be done as soon as possible. Early in our conversation, I got 3 different descriptions or kind of ideas of what they were thinking about when it came to the artwork. The end result ultimately combines elements of all 3 of these. This is the story about how I made professional cover art for a band in roughly 24 hours and a step-by-step look at the decisions I made and how I executed them. How does the color orange make you feel? For me, it reminds me of sunsets. What about the color green? That's the color that fuels my matcha addiction. Do any of the primary colors make you feel a certain way? The color red reminds me of cherries because it's one of my favorite fruits. Red also reminds me of the subscribe button, which you should totally click on down below. Yellow reminds me of fall, which is definitely my favorite season. Blue reminds me of a lot of things for some reason, but the ocean and the sky are certainly at the forefront of my brain. Colors can communicate so much. The same color presented in a different way can totally swing the way you're feeling or what it reminds you of. A lighter green will definitely have me thinking about a matcha latte, but the darker that green gets, it's gonna start reminding me of the Pacific Northwest relatively quickly. Colors felt like a very natural way to start. The band even mentioned at the forefront of the conversation that they wanted a colorful palette. They also continued to mention how they kind of want a vintage vibe, which definitely would play into the tone and the hue of the colors I would end up choosing. I ended up choosing colors that were bright but not too saturated. Yellow was the first obvious choice, and I think I chose a yellow that is bright but doesn't take over the palette. Next was the blue, and this specific blue will make more sense once we get into the imagery, but I would describe this blue as like a muted powder blue. When yellow and blue come to play immediately, naturally red gets involved, and I wanted to choose a red that felt mysterious and edgy, but also like kind of worn, and I made sure to choose a red that wasn't too bright, but certainly wouldn't be classified as a dark red. The band mentioned a nature feeling, so I made sure to pick a green that felt very organic and kind of soft. Later on in the design, I needed something to kind of break up the composition, but not be an obstruction, which is where this color orange came into play. While the palette was certainly the first thing I came up with, I was coming up with these colors with imagery I planned on using in the back of my brain. The blank canvas of what is soon to be an album cover can kind of be intimidating just because of all the possibilities or specific outcomes that could happen. You can have a photo of the band or individual to hopefully recognize them in the future. This photo can be very dramatic. The photo could be performative or while they're literally playing their instruments or singing or whatever they do. Or you could have a more fine art approach. You could have a painting that hopefully communicates what the musician wants you to feel. These paintings can be super weird and surreal. They can be kind of confusing to make you look at it longer. They can be very clear and flattering, or they could be anywhere in between. It's literally limitless possibilities. Trying to cover what could be on album art in just one video would be impossible. In my case, the band wanted me to come up with my own solution rather than using photos of them, and I knew I wanted the imagery to be inspired by the song lyrics. Occasion's debut single is titled Mountain Man, and it tells this fast-paced, high-energy folklore story about a man that lives in the mountains, very legendary kind of themes. Putting a face to this mountain man would be impossible, but the song does mention that he has scars. So I found a copyright-free photo of a skeleton that looked like it had scarring and started stylizing it. I actually stylized it after some of my own work that the band had mentioned inspired them to email me in the first place. I'll make sure to put that video in the description below in case you're interested in checking that out. This is where the red came in. Again, I wanted to communicate mysterious and worn like a mountain man theoretically would be. Next, I wanted to use the blue for mountains, and again, this is a reference to my own work with the mountains coming out of the skull's head. I made sure to use very sharp and rocky mountains. I wanted them to look worn and kind of dangerous. The last piece of the imagery, at least the main imagery, was the sun with that wonderful yellow color. Having a circle in your design can kind of convey this wholeness feeling, and with it representing the sun in this case, I hope you can kind of feel the movement with it. This would be the end of the imagery for now, as we don't add any more imagery until we figure out what our typography is going to look like. What kind of font do you think I chose to use? Do you think I started with a structured sans serif? Or maybe a funky serif that tells its own story? Or maybe a script font? I've become a big fan of those in the right context recently. Or maybe Cool Vetico was finally the answer to my typeface problems. The answer ended up being more than one font, actually. I started with a simple but elegant serif font with small details, tall and condensed, and in all caps made for a great display. The second font was a script, not only because the contrast is interesting, but because of the spacing of the title. The song's name is Mountain Man, with the first word being a lot longer than the second word. Stylistically, I enjoyed very precise and measured typography that is flush on both sides within a design. With such a contrast in length of words, it would have been really awkward to use the same typeface and stretch out the word man. So using a second contrasting typeface was a really easy choice. I really like how it turned out, and I love a good font contrast when they're interacting with one another. The next step was giving an ink bleed effect to the typography, which caters to that vintage look. I ended up placing the song title and the band name within this orange box that kind of breaks up the design, and it adds color, and it kind of caters to the vintage look as it looks similar to a vintage newspaper strip. On the first iteration of the album, I featured some paragraph body text from a press release about the Occasions releasing their debut single, but this took that newspaper strip concept a little bit too far. It felt forced, like I was just throwing something there to fill up space. After the entire composition was done, it was just about adding tiny details and textures to cater to that weathered vintage look. Huge shout out to the guys at Occasions. This was such a cool opportunity, and I got to explore and learn so much. It'll definitely be one of the coolest sightings of my artwork in the real world. But that right there is the step-by-step process and what it takes to design album artwork. Here is the final reveal of not only the album artwork, but the graphics I made them and the animation I made them for their Spotify. I will also link their website, their Instagram, their YouTube, and you should totally go comment on their socials telling them to use the skull design for a merch campaign. That would be so much fun. If you want a closer look at anything, all of this is on my website, and you can go check that out in the description below. This project was really abrupt and out of nowhere. It actually interrupted another project I have going on that I'm currently recording a video for. So if you like this video, make sure to subscribe for more. There's plenty on the way. I'm really excited about other things I have going on. Make sure to go follow me on Instagram at cooper.judah.art. Anything I have going on, I make sure to post there. As always, thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll see you sooner than later.